Welcome to a realm where personal growth meets expansive spirituality and where we're not just scratching the surface, we're diving deep, widening our perspectives and having a darn good time doing it. This is the Enlighten Podcast and I am your host, Jen Hamilton. You'll enjoy an infusion of motivation, empowerment and inspiration that will resonate in every aspect of your life. Expect captivating stories, heartfelt musings, and my own personal experiences. But that's not all. I'm bringing awe-inspiring individuals to the table, so get ready to meet some remarkable souls whose wisdom and stories will leave you spellbound. No topic is off limits here. Brace yourself for raw authenticity, unfiltered vulnerability, and yes, the occasional splash of explicit language. We're delving into the realms of the esoteric, mystical, and the woo-woo, unafraid to explore the extraordinary. So if you are ready to venture beyond the surface, to explore the depths of your soul, and to awaken the magic of life, if your heart says yes, then hit that play button and let the Enlighten Podcast guide you on this remarkable expedition. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enlighten Podcast. I am your host, Jen, and my guest today is Deirdre Murphy. Deirdre is a musician, interdisciplinary artist, and neuro-somatic coach. She grew up in rural Alaska with a profound connection to nature and lived and traveled throughout the US before moving to Ireland. She is the creator of many original works of music, dance, theatre, circus, and performing arts, including the circus musical Capitalism, the musical from 2017, a synthesis of work in theatre, circus, dance, music, and activism. The musical toured Ireland and Italy to sold-out houses and has been translated into Italian. Deirdre's first passion lies in dance and the body, and she's a lifelong practitioner and teacher of movement technique and bodywork. She has written more than 60 songs and is known for the poetry and wordplay of her lyrics. Through her creative practice, Deirdre aspires to present the ideal of each individual's right to the very highest level of human rights while engaging in comical mishap and awkward timing. Deirdre is such a beautiful human, a wealth of knowledge, and such an inspiring woman in the arts. I know you're going to love this conversation, so without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, Deirdre, and welcome to the Enlighten Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. Now tell us where in the world that you are joining us from.
I am joining you from Dublin, Ireland.
Dublin, Ireland. And how is Dublin, Ireland?
I really love it here. I moved here, so I'm not from here. And I've got to say, I love Dublin. Like, the women of Dublin are amazing. Like, the music in Dublin is amazing. Like, there's a lot going for it. Mm.
I love that you said the women are amazing. That's fantastic. That's not something that you hear spoken about a city, and I love that. Tell us what makes the women amazing.
I don't know what it is culturally, but I do. But I think actually there's quite a strong matriarchal culture here. But the women I know are like so powerful. I mean, I think I'm very blessed with this. They're strong. They're nice. They're super funny. They're lovely.
Well, that's amazing. I haven't visited, so I will pop it on my bucket list. I'm actually in by the time this goes live, it would have well and truly passed, but in about 15 days will be the 1st of December here, and that will actually be 1,000 days till I'm 40. So I'm going to make a massive bucket list of the things that I want to do in the next 1,000 days until I'm 40. And you know what? I'm going to add Ireland on there. That's going to be on my list. Thank you so much for inspiring me this morning.
You'll have to come and visit. Yeah.
I absolutely will. Now, I want to dive in because you're a performing artist and coach, and you've done some pretty cool shit in this world. Tell us all about the magic that you bring to this world.
I would love to. Thank you. Well, I love magic, first of all. I'm quite into the methodology behind it. And myself, I started dancing at the age of 3 years old, and I'm performing as well. And I've been doing a degree in theatre in University of Alaska, Anchorage. I'm from Alaska originally. And then I went off to go be a dancer in Chicago. and I was in the apprentice ensemble of a company there. I'll give you the abbreviated history. And yeah, had a really great time. Also had such bad culture shock moving from Alaska to Chicago. Like, it was dramatic. I kind of forgot how to talk to people for about 4 months. It was wild. Very overwhelming. And then I moved to San Francisco for a couple of years and continued to dance there. And I've always been a singer as well. So I've always sung in choirs growing up, and had some voice lessons along the way. And moved all over the States. I lived in Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Montana as well. And then I moved to Ireland about 18 years ago. And I started writing music after taking an improvisational choir class, which was really mind-opening for me, and like allowed me to start to use my voice in a whole new way. It was just sounding as well as singing. So it wasn't just, oh, but it was, you could make any kind of noise that you want. And I think it's fascinating what she did with it. So it'd be like a really proper body-based warm-up. Regan O'Brien is the one who is leading it. Proper body-based warm-up. And then, like, for example, she would give us a score. So it'd be 15 people, and she'd give you a score where you had to sing a piece for 10 minutes. And she wouldn't time it. So the whole group had to guess that it was 10 minutes. And there would have to be, within that, there would have to be like a trio, a solo, like 2 silences. And so she'd give you these different criteria, and then as a group you had to improvise it. And for me, that tremendously freed my voice up after a long time of singing in choirs and being like, this is what my voice sounds like, this small slice. And then I started writing music after that. And the first thing I wrote really was a musical. I had envisioned for a long time, really, some kind of like cabaret or something lighthearted and fun and sexy, and around politics. And I ended up with Capitalism, the musical, which was a circus musical, because I started doing like circus and aerial dance along the line as well. And that was the biggest project of my life for quite some time. It took me about 5 years to write it. It was in a performance residency for about 1.5 years in the back loft here in Dublin. And then it ended up going on a small tour of Italy and a tour of Ireland. And then it's been out of production for the last few years, but recently it's been invited back into production. So we'll be looking for funding and support. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you is you want to bring it to Australia. That's
That was the underlying message, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. I want to talk about what it feels like to be able to activate your voice, because you said that you're in singing for so long, and then like you were able to take it to new ranges. What happens internally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, when you're actually able to activate your voice?
That's a great question, because like, even though I sang in choirs and I did have a history with my voice, I also had a much more profound history as a dancer. And many dancers are really uncomfortable using their voice. And I definitely experienced that as well, which is, I guess, why it was so freeing to do the improvisational group. And even with dance, like I went through a period when I got into college, I went through a period of studying improvisation, which I've done a lot since then, but I studied improvisation. And for the first 3 months of it, kind of twice a week for 2 hours, I just stood there like absolutely paralyzed with self-consciousness. It was remarkable, like how embarrassed I was to have a body and to like not be able to move it, or to not understand what to do with it, or just not have any kind of connection to it in a way. And then eventually I was able to step back a bit and see, oh, actually, like whatever movement I'm coming up with is not personal. Like it's just the animal of my body. And if I can let the animal of my body go without, I wasn't thinking like this at the time, but without my frontal cortex getting in the way, then there's a lot of freedom there. There's a lot of self-expression. And then I think that going through the same process with the voice was equally illuminating or equally profound. Your voice is really close. It's really intimate. If you're in a room with somebody, it's actually like the sound waves coming from your voice vibrating the air and interacting with another person's eardrum. It blows me away when I actually stop to think about it. And so many people have got a wound around their voice. Like there's so many people who someone told them at some point that they couldn't sing, or someone asked them to stop singing, and I think there's a lot of profound damage that has happened to people's voices. And so I think that is a huge part of people's healing as well. I've studied voice quite a bit with one of my main teachers is Judith Mock, and she's a amazing opera singer and an amazing vocal coach herself. And she taught me to relax, and she taught me to like resonate the bones in my face as much as I could, and to like better, more deep, profound, connected ways of breathing. And when I'm singing or when I'm performing, there's very little else going on. Like it's that, you know? So it's a single point of focus. So I guess in a way it's almost like a flip side of a meditative practice, because like the meditative practice of the yoga would be very internal, and then I feel like performance is the mirror of it, you know? So I feel whereas yoga or meditation might be like deeply, deeply in, performance is deeply, deeply out. And the more I can bring my voice to that, and the more I can bring that focus, the more connected I feel.
Isn't it interesting, like what you mentioned about, you know, the meditation? Because as soon as you said meditation, I was thinking it sounds like a meditative practice anyway. But like you said, that's very much an inwards journey. So I feel it's a beautiful balance of the inwards and the outwards. You know, it's almost masculine and feminine, you know?
Yeah.
Where do you feel humanity shit the bed when it comes to being able to use our voices and being in our fullest expression? Where did all that self-judgment or the judgment from others come from? Where did all of these conditions come from? And I want to share a story, because I've actually got a beautiful girlfriend of mine who owns a vocal studio here in Australia. She's based in Adelaide. And I went to Adelaide a couple of weeks ago to support a gig that they had put on. So they teach adults how to sing, and they prepare them to do a stage performance. And so these guys they could have done it for years. It could have been their first show, but they teach them a song, and they get up on stage and they perform it. And it was so interesting to witness that, because I mean, I love singing. I'm not a trained singer. I'm not trained by a vocal coach. Put me in the shower if I'm alone, or in the car, I'm fine. Put me around other people, especially professionals, and I'm dead quiet for fear of judgment. And this is me we're talking about, like Captain Extrovert. I've got a podcast. I could speak on stage for 4 hours underwater with a ball gag in my mouth. Do you know what I mean? Like, imagine that one. Put me around professional singers that actually know what they're doing, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, what is that?
I get that as well around people whose voices I really want to hear. It's not even that maybe they're two different things, because it's not necessarily that I even feel self-conscious, but sometimes there's a voice where I'm like, I must be quiet so I can listen. You know? But as far as where did humanity shit the bed, I think that probably, I mean, early childhood is such a thing. I mean, if you think about your parents when you were young, like they were probably like stressed out and like had their moments of being overwhelmed and being like in a state. And then there's this cute little voice going for quite a while. And like, even just like that simple, could you be quiet, or like, stop singing now, can be heartbreaking for a kid, you know? And I think that so many people have got that story, and it's not necessarily intentional. But I know there are a lot of like, you know, primary school, elementary school music teachers who I think are a little bit responsible for this as well. Like, you're the one who can't sing, like you mime the words or whatever. I think that's it. But then I guess there's maybe a deeper level to that as well, just psychologically, especially as women. Like the space that we have to speak. I mean, if you look at any meeting that has both genders in it, and who has got the majority of the speaking time, it's men. You know, it's just a fact. So I'd say it's well into our culture, especially growing up. Like, I say you're a little bit younger than me, but like having the like movies and TV and all this kind of representation through the 80s and 90s. Women hardly had any screen time, you know, they hardly spoke at all. And so I think there's a big role modeling challenge, which is maybe not as evident right now for people who are younger than me. I hope not, because there's a lot better representation out there. So hopefully that will be shifting.
Yes, let's make it happen. Let's
make it happen.
riot
Here we are right now. Yeah.
One of the things that I have noticed about talking to, my friend and the other coaches at the vocal studio is there's actually a lot of personal development in it as well. You don't just go to learn how to sing. Anyone can learn how to sing, but you can learn about vocal cords and muscles. Like I learn something new from her every time, and she, talks about where to breathe from, and I'm like, I didn't even know that's a thing. Like it makes so much sense when she talks about it, but no one teaches you this stuff, from an early age. There's a lot of essentially life coaching involved with that as well. I'd love to hear a bit about your journey, about, perhaps how you've come out of your shell or had to rewire your subconscious mind, if there's any deep-seated beliefs that you had from an early age that then you really had to work through to be able to be the person you are today on stage.
Absolutely. Honestly, though, there's a split there for me, because I've always felt really deeply connected to myself when I'm on stage, and it's off stage that I've struggled more to connect with the sense of worth and like sense of what I'm capable of. Whereas when I perform, I'm there. Like there's no question. Like I'm 100% there. I've probably my deepest point of connection with other humans or with the world around me. And those questions of worth have showed up in loads of other ways. From like early childhood patterning, and then seeing, like, I'm 47 now, and finally seeing like how all of those pennies have dropped. And like, yeah, I saw The Wisdom of Trauma at a certain point when it came out a few years ago, and watching that, just like, I didn't have any major traumas in my life, but I was a sensitive child. And I just saw huge frameworks slam into place, and everything suddenly made so much more sense to me. And as I said, I didn't even have like one of the main like adverse childhood experiences. I was bullied. Bullying was hard, and that was a tough separation of self from very early on.
When you mentioned that, you are, when you're on stage, or you're a fullest expression of yourself and you can connect with other people, has that always been the case ever since the time that you first stepped foot on stage, or is that just something that you grew into essentially?
I grew into it, but I grew into it pretty early. Like I remember like having, I think one of my kids was performing, and so they had like snakes in their legs, snakes in their arms. I'm very much related to that like full body nervous system, like, what am I doing here? This is terrifying. But I started performing from the age of 3, and I performed a lot as a young child. So I think my nervous system got quite used to that quite early, quite easily. So I've always loved it, honestly. It wasn't for performance itself, it wasn't a particular issue for me, which is remarkable looking back at it. Remarkable. It was a safe space, actually, is what it was.
Yeah. And I think people are born performers as well. I always loved the stage, primary school, kindy, high school, always put my hand up for it, never really got nervous on stage. In fact, as I stepped more into the personal development space, and I've done stage work on there, or done, live events even online, there's a point where you get to go, fear is just confused excitement. And the physiological response that I'm having in my body is that of excitement. The nerves are excitement. We can rewire ourselves to, really understand what the fear is and what it is that we're actually experiencing. And I know that you work around self-directed neuroplasticity. Tell us what that even is. Like, what's self-directed neuroplasticity, and how does that correlate to being a performer?
Well, what self-directed neuroplasticity is essentially like growing new pathways in your brain. And so it's looking at the actual things that I teach people are called pattern interrupts. And they're just moments, they're things that you can do, techniques that give you a chance to reset. So I'm sure you've heard nerves that fire together, wire together. And so once they wire together enough, it's like a huge freeway going in your mind. And these techniques just provide little off-ramps. And as you take the off ramps more and more frequently, then the highway starts to kind of degrade, and the well-worn pathway of anxiety or overwhelm or trauma or what have you begins to shrivel and weaken. And it is a remarkably powerful practice. And I'm actually working with a few performers right now around anxiety in performance. And that has been game-changing. It's just been game-changing. Because it also works with memory reconsolidation. So you probably may or may not know, the way memory works is that every time you take a memory out, it updates. And so that means that you're never working with the original memory. Whereas they say, like, the best way to never change, the best way to not change a memory is to never remember it, to keep it intact. Because it's like a Word document. It's always the most current version. So that's why eyewitness accounts aren't so great. And that's why lots of things happen the way they do. So in a coaching context, what that does is it allows you to kind of trigger a neural pathway of like a familiar thing that you're not mad about, and then you can put in a roadblock, like the pattern interrupt, and then you can create a whole new emotional state in the body, revisit that memory, and then you have got different context for the memory. And so I've worked with like super early childhood memories where I felt rejected, and just taking the punch out of them, or like taking the sting out of them. And it's a game changer. Absolutely. And so you can do that as well with, if you're performing and you feel terrified and it's a moment that you're seeing the audience where you're like, oh no, this is, and you shrivel up, then you can completely, you can rewrite that essentially. And you can be excited, and you can be confident, and you can be connected to the audience, and you can feel so pleased and proud to be there. And it's so empowering. It's life-changing.
I was going to say, it sounds absolutely life-changing. Like, that is a game changer. Do you do it through hypnosis, or do you do it through talk therapy? Like, tell us about the actual process of doing it, because it's very similar to the principles of hypnotherapy. I'm a hypnotherapist. And so it's literally about, rewiring neural pathways. So I love it.
Yeah. When you work with light trance states. Yeah. It's not super deep though.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's such a powerful thing. And this is what we've only come to realize in the last, 30 to 50 years, really, is just how much we can change our brains. We have neuroplasticity, which means that we're not stuck. We can rewire our thoughts. We can change our memory patterns, and we can create a better experience of life. And how we do this in small ways is how we do this in all ways, essentially. So if someone's got, perhaps a fear or a phobia that they want to work through on a smaller scale, then that can get them to that, that big stage, and it's going to be no different. I'd love to hear from you about someone that's had a really profound experience with this technique.
Well, I had a session yesterday with a woman in Singapore who was, I think she did event coaching. And she, according to her feedback from yesterday, it changed her life. But the first time I used it was actually I was singing in somebody's wedding ceremony. And I happened to be sitting next to the groom at the dinner the night before. And he was saying he was shitting himself about the speech he had to give the following night. And he had had a horrendous public speaking experience 7 years previously. And I was like, oh, well, I might be able to help with this. And we literally just had like less than 5 minutes together. And I went through it with him, like, how would you like to feel in that situation? And he's like, oh, I'd like to feel, confident, and I'd like to feel like my hands aren't shaking, and I can look up off my notes, and I can make jokes, and I can make eye contact with the audience. And I was like, well, how would it have been 7 years ago? And if you had that, if you felt like this then? And he was like, oh, that would have been totally different. I would have been, and I was, this is working. And then the next night at his wedding, he just knocked it out of the park. Like, he was so confident and so happy to be there and so warm. And I was so proud of him and so thrilled. It was a big glow.
I love that. What an incredible thing, especially for his wedding. Most people only get one shot at this. And so to be able to have that confidence after like literally 5 minutes, like that is how quick that we can change our minds. This is why I'm so passionate about it, because it's like you get to decide what you want. Like, to me, that's ultimate freedom and liberation is being able to have your own thoughts and being able to, you know, be in charge of your own experience of life. You know, to me, that's hacking the matrix or whatever the fuck you want to call it, you know?
Totally. It's personal liberation, like it's self-liberation. Absolutely. Yeah. No two ways about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And this is the thing, like, you know, the more we do it, the more we understand that it's possible as well. I actually, I was with a lover a few years ago. Let's talk about this. And he had spoken on stages before, and he said to me, he's like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to speak on stage. And we went out to a field, and he's like, get naked. So there was no one else around. I got naked.
This is a good start.
Yeah. He put the camera on me and he said, this is your topic. You have 30 seconds until I hit record and you need to speak for like 3 minutes on this. I was like, so I'm at my most vulnerable. I'm naked in a field and he's given me this topic to speak about. And I did it because that was my absolute edge. And anything that's not naked in a field with like 30 seconds to prepare becomes my version of easy.
Okay. I love it.
My edges, like I've always thought to myself, okay, so what if I was so we have like big sports stadiums here. What if I was like called up in the middle of a sports game? Not that I ever go to these sports games, but what if I was and there was 50,000 people looking at me? How would that feel? You know, so just to be, if I can think of 50,000 eyes on me, or I'm naked in a field with a camera pointed at me with 30 seconds to decide what I'm going to say, anything before that's easy. So for me, like it was going, okay, well, of course it's easy because I can pre-plan something, and you're always going to have those nerves initially. You know, there's sometimes like I'll jump on a podcast and like things, you know, flow pretty easily for me. But then there's also times where I've been nervous and I just check in with myself. I'm like, okay, what is that? And, you know, even stage things as well. There's that moment where you get up and you on stage. I don't know about you, but you're like, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip. One of the things I learned though through NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is that the obviously the repetitive thoughts or that internal dialogue is what we're experiencing. And I remember I was hiking a active volcano in Bali a few years ago, Mount Batur, and I kept thinking to myself, instead of saying don't stack it, don't stack it, don't stack it, I'm always upright. I'm always upright. I'm staying upright. So what it is, you know, that key word that we're focusing, if I'm focusing on falling, my mind's going to be taking me to the point where I'm going to be falling. Then I get to be right. And then I get to go see, I told you so, right? Which is then we get a little dopamine hit and feel better. But when we're speaking into the words that we do want to experience, it's what we call in coaching the towards and away motivation. You know, tell me what it is that you do want. Don't tell me what it is that you don't want. You know, and it sounds sort of very similar, you know, the journey that you take people on, because, you know, when there's fear involved, when there's the unknown, when there's potentially shame around our voices or the speech that we could be giving or whatever that looks like, we're going to go naturally into the space of this is what I don't want. And this is what I don't want to experience. And, you know, I always invite my clients to tell me what it is that you do want. And that's been a game changer.
Indeed. Yeah. It makes me think of like the meta pattern, which is like the fundamental, like underlying structure for change, which is always going toward like what you do want and like the state that you do want to be in. And it's a beautiful practice.
Yeah. It's incredible what our minds can do in such a short period of time. I guess this is why I completely froth over this kind of stuff, like anything to do with, you know, neuroscience or the brain or mindset or anything like that, you know, because it just shows, you know, that we're not stuck. I actually, my brother got married. I should know this. I think it would have been 3 years ago. And I was asked to make a speech at the wedding. I didn't write the speech. I got up there and I just spoke. And honestly, I probably should not have had the amount of champagne that I'd had. I have this alter ego, and her name is Champagne Jen, and she's a little bit dangerous.
Champagne
She doesn't
Hamilton.
come out often. It's like champagne literally like changes my DNA. I didn't even know what happens. Anyway, I was really mindful of the toast. I was so mindful not to have too much because I knew what I was like. And I remember getting up to the podium thinking to myself, I have not prepared head a thing. Like I've got one shot at this and everyone's going to remember it if I was the sister that screwed this up.
No pressure.
I think I did okay. No one said anything. I honestly can't remember it. I don't know if that's the champagne or the nerves, but that was also an edge. Like just getting up there knowing that I had everything in me that I wanted to say. Like there's not a lot that I script. You know, I don't script conversations with people. I don't script episodes. I recorded an episode for the podcast the other day and I was like, I'll just do a quick one. It was an hour and 20 minutes of me just talking.
Excellent.
It was good because like I'm a natural storyteller and I was recounting, you know, a story that happened. And I understand that not everyone's like that as well, you know, and I think it's definitely something that we get the opportunity to practice if we choose to. If someone's out there listening, Deirdre, and they're curious about, you know, how to use their voice, what it looks like to activate their voice, you know, whether it's for singing or whether it's for making a speech at their wedding or just being able to go up and talk to people in a public space, what would you say? Where's the best place to start to even just get find that confidence within?
I would say home, like just start humming, making noises, experiment, you know, up, down, round and about, like see if you can hit the wall over there with your voice. See if you can, you know, see if you can make it so quiet that you know, just experiment with volume, texture, crazy sounds, like just play, you know, because we learn so much more quickly through play. And then I would say step 2, find somebody else to play with. Like even if it's just one other person that you, or it could be a coach or it could be like a singing teacher, but it could just be a friend and just make silly noises, you know, play with echo, play with reverberation, find a beautiful space and poke your voice around in it.
I love that. I actually, I've got 2 kids. They're 7 and 9. And we get up pretty early in the morning to get ready for school and get out the door. And I'm always the first one up. My alarm goes off. And we just have this thing now where in like the most, not the most, but pretty high pitched sound I can make, I will sing at them, Cover Me in Sunshine by Pink. And that's their alarm clock.
Excellent.
I don't know where it came from, but it just became a thing and it's so much fun. And I actually, this is so bad, I actually threaten my kids that I don't punish my kids, I sing at them. Like
what kind of associations are you building in that now?
I know. I'm like, I will sing at you and they're like, okay, I'll stop.
Oh, the power.
Right? I mean, we don't need to hit our kids anymore. We just need to sing at them and they're like, oh, straight into it's like military style. All I have to do is threaten to jump out and cover me in sunshine.
Discipline. Wow.
I said to my daughter just wakes up and she starts laughing and I'm like, I'm the coolest mum, right? Like validate me for being cool. Like no other mums do this. Cool.
But maybe they'll start after hearing this because that's a gorgeous idea. What a lovely idea. Yeah.
It's good because like I actually love it because sometimes my son will be in his room and he's in there singing, making up songs. And I love it so much. Like it is the most adorable thing. And I don't want to sort of, you know, record him behind his back, but I kind of want to have memories of it because it's so adorable.
Every once in a while.
If I say anything, they kind of get a bit sort of funny about it. But yeah, no,
maybe both ask for permission in advance or something. Like I might be recording you sometime this week if I hear it, or the next 2 months, or the next year. Yeah,
exactly. And they're both quite expressive in their own ways, which is really good. And I want to be able to give them that opportunity to be in their fullest expression, because using your voice, not necessarily, you know, for stage, but using your voice to speak your truth, to create boundaries, to ask what you want, to discern what you don't want, like that is life goals essentially. Like being able to use your voice to communicate how you genuinely feel is a gift.
It is an absolute gift. Not just a gift, it's a work in progress. Like
yes.
The whole time. I don't think anybody comes to it naturally. Maybe some people do come to it naturally, but I wouldn't have come to it naturally. That's been the work of a lifetime.
Yeah, I've done so much work around that. Like noticing as well, like doing a lot of work around self-abandonment And why did I self-abandon? It's because I was too scared to speak up. And then I had to check in with the relationship that I had with myself. What was I cultivating within? And being on, a self-love journey, speaking to myself as though I was my best friend. I'm like, would I let my best friend go through this? And then when the answer was no, it's like, well, hang on, who's sticking up for me? Her. Oh, hang on, I'm the only one that can do that. And by virtue of me doing the work, I'm also teaching my children how to do this as well. And I celebrate them when they communicate what it is that they do want, what it is that they don't want, when they speak their truth, when they ask for what they want, when they're in their fullest expression of however they need to be. I make a point to acknowledge them for that, so that they don't have the same situations that I went through, that in school, in family, in culture. Children should be seen, not heard. Like, that's the biggest one that has run deep for me in my lifetime. And like you go to places when you're a kid and you're told to be quiet, or you're praised for being quiet as well. And I've noticed a lot of the times when I've gone back through this with my clients for coaching, is we get to the point where they were validated for being the good child. Like, when we break down even, the psychological meaning of good, and we realize that it's associated with being right, and being right is associated with being safe, and safe means I'm not going to die. So by virtue of that, being wrong is unsafe, I might die, or being bad equals wrong equals I might die, inside. And so to really start to break that down within myself, and then to be able to help other people, and just to notice like where it initially came from, and do some forgiveness of others, do some forgiveness of self through that. It is so powerful.
It is indeed. My parents would have felt like, my parents are lovely people, and if they had fought, they would go into, their method of fighting was to go into different rooms and not talk. And it took me years, like well into my 20s, before I was able to express anger articulately, or like well into my 30s probably even. Talk about self-abandonment. And then I would have had a lot of struggle expressing myself within my marriage, and within even having written the musical, and having produced it, and having been artistic director of it. Like, that was kind of 2016, 17. And even then, like, I would have been really shy about stepping into a position of authority and telling other people what to do. Really shy of it. And I ended up working with a stage director, a different director, who was amazing. Because it was so out of my comfort zone to be like, okay, it's time to get started. I just did not know how to do that. And it's so simple now. But at the time, like, stepping into that leadership role was so awkward, and I was so uncomfortable. So I'd love to get it back up again. So that I have another chance. Yeah. Do it.
Now we will link to the ways people can get in touch with you and follow you online in the show notes. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you today and dive into all parts of you and your experience. Before we wrap this up though, Deirdre, I'd love to ask you one question. And to you, what is the meaning of life?
Oh, love. Love is the first answer that comes up. Yeah, love, connection. I guess if there's meaning, it's meaning. It's connection with other people. It's connection with nature. Yeah.
Amazing. That's beautiful. We will, like I said, we'll link to everything in the show notes, and we'll keep an eye out here in Australia for your show to come here. Yes, we'd love to have it here. Deirdre Murphy, thank you so much for joining me on the Enlightenment podcast.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.